Watermark's Church Leadership Podcast, a conversation with church leaders for church leaders. I'm your host, John McGee. Thanks so much for joining us today. Dave Bruskas, welcome back, brother.
Hi, John. Good to be with you today.
You're smiling big.
Yeah, got a new addition to the family. Grandbaby number 8, little Joey, and Joey is my baby's baby. So the youngest daughter, and so that you talk about feeling old. When the baby has the baby, you feel old.
That's amazing.
Joyful too.
It's amazing. Yep. I still think about your, your little mantle with all those stockings. These are goals. They're goals. So I'm chasing you. We've got a long way to go. I'm going to tell my kids to.
Lots to look forward to.
Most of them need to get married and get going because this is clearly a competition. It's about us, right? It's clearly about us. Just kidding. So, brother, we caused quite a stir back in December. We dropped that episode on when is it time to leave, and got lots of emails. I got some tickets to the Mavs from a recruiter. He said business has never been better now. So thank you.
A lot of elders upset with us, right? At churches,
disruption in the force. No, but I don't really get nervous when we release these things. We just talk, and Ashley takes it and posts it up. But I prayed about that, thought about it. I don't know that I woke up in the middle of the night, but just hoping it was helpful, and but nobody, prematurely, hit the eject button here. So you said at the end of that, which was so great, you said, "Hey, what if we did an episode on why you should stay?"
Yeah,
we just talked about why they might want to leave, and which I think would be a great kind of 1-2 punch here. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is kind of why we should stay, and just given what we've seen, some of the stories we know of others, some of our own stories, why should people think about staying for the long haul? And I don't even know that we're going to build a case. I don't think we need to talk about every issue around this topic. This isn't a book, but I'd just love to talk just for a few minutes and just raise that possibility for people thinking about a long term of ministry or leadership at a specific place. So the question people always have when you have a topic is, what is in it for me? Like, what about me? So let's start with the individual. Let's talk first. Hey, why is it good for us? Why is it good for us to stay at a place for a long time?
There's so many reasons that we can get into, John. And I feel strongly about this. It may not seem like that from the last episode we did, but I really think staying is the default. I really think you stay.
So good.
Unless the Lord compellingly calls you out as validated by other leaders, including those that are leading alongside you. So I really believe in the community aspect of decision making when you go or come. But I think staying should always be the default mode. And I think one of the reasons that you and I had a chance to visit about just prior to this is the idea of progressive sanctification.
Yeah.
One of the ways that God uses profoundly to grow us into the image of Christ is deep relationships, and those don't happen overnight. And so the more I get to know somebody, the more they get to know me, the more they know where my strengths and weaknesses and growth areas are. And so there's something to be said about deep, life-lasting relationships that are forged through hard times that cause us to grow deeply in Christ.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, so not a news flash if you are in Christian ministry of some kind, that people generally do not change on a dime. They don't hear one of your amazing sermons and then everything in their life goes up and to the right, that they become more like Jesus. There is a progressive nature, which is to say it takes time. Another way to say that, but that feels really, really clear in Scripture. Philippians 1:6. He begins this work, will be faithful to complete it. And so ultimate sanctification comes when we die and we're glorified. 2 Corinthians 3:18 says we are being transformed into His image. There's just progressive nature of that. And I met with a guy today. And I can remember when he was around, when he kind of first came to this church. Good guy. He actually grew up in church. But here he is, years, this is, whatever the math is, probably 10, 12 years later. And just his wisdom, his walk with Christ, the kind of the things that he's catalyzing now, it was almost kind of shocking to think about when I first met him to where he is now as a grown man who's leading in this church, and that all that took place over time. And had I popped in, popped out, I would never got to see that, and there's just a lot of joy in watching someone grow. Now it's hard. It's not, none of that, a 12-year run. And I've not walked with this person closely, but I do know it's one of the joys of being at a place is you get to pop into people's lives and then catch them in these little snapshots and be really encouraged by the change. But I think progressive sanctification is a great one. Another one I thought about, Dave, on the drive in this morning was how a lot of people have about 2 years worth of good stuff. Yeah. You ever seen this?
Right. No, I haven't. I think I know where you're going.
Yeah. So famously, a preacher comes to town, and he's got 2 years of great sermons. Yeah. Well, they're great because he preached the same 2 years that he did at the last place that he had honed from the place before that, And so you can kind of get away with work in the past, work on you, work on your craft, whatever that is, if you're always bouncing around. And I thought there's, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone talk about this, but if you stay in a place a really, really long time, unless you want to just hit repeat on all of your leadership axioms and all of your teachings and all of your good ideas, but you're going to have to keep learning. You're going to have to keep growing. And I think staying at a place would force you to have to do that, which is a real gift. Most of us want to get better. But yes.
So what you're saying then is we're talking about what's in it for me. It's like it's good for your preaching.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. As a matter of fact, I think the guys that I've been around over the years that I would say are most effective at preaching do two things really well. Number one is they know the word. And that's been honed, but they know their people.
Yeah.
And so I think it stands to reason as you grow in your knowledge of the word day in and day out, but you also live among your people. You see the things that bother them, the things that trip them up, the things that challenge them. You become much more effective from the pulpit because you know who you're preaching to. Yeah. So I'm the guy who, although, glad to preach at a weekend retreat somewhere that I don't know anybody, I just find so much more effectiveness in preaching to people I know and love well.
Yeah.
And so I actually think it increases your fruitfulness in preaching to be with people for a long season.
That's good. Well, so let's talk about then flip it to the congregation or the organization, wherever you lead. What do they get, from your perspective on, or what do they get from a leader who stays a long time and is just kind of with them until, like you said, hey, the bias is towards staying, unless we hear an audible word or there's just something that becomes clear, the bias towards staying. What's in it for the congregation? What's in it for the organization when the leader stays?
I think they get the same thing. Said differently, John, I think they get stability.
That's good.
Which is so important today. We live in a world that's so rapidly changing. And we live in a place where there's a lot of institutional mistrust. And trust is built over time. And what trust produces is stability. It becomes safe then to be honest about sin. It becomes safe to grow together. There's mutual commitment that deepens. So I think stability and I think maturity. I think there's actually maturity that corporately happens as the leader matures together with the people that he's alongside. And so I think there's great benefit. And my experience has been, unless something is going terribly wrong, then most churches are bent towards that.
Yeah.
Most if you've hired somebody away from a church, and that person is well loved by that church, it's a painful thing to do.
Yeah.
You think twice about it because I think that there's great advantages to churches. I know even when we look at Watermark, one of the things we look at year in, year out is our turnover rate.
Mm-hmm.
We want that to be low because
right.
we understand this principle that people grow at the rate of relationship. Relationships are really, really important. And if staff is constantly turning over, that's difficult. And so it can feel like, just like it feels to the pastor when he steps into a new congregation, he's starting all over again. It can feel like that at church too.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here we go again.
Right.
We're starting all over. We got to get to know this person. And so I think it's mutually beneficial if you can to have a plan of longevity.
That's good. Yeah. Otherwise, it become kind of arms crossed. Hey, this too shall pass. This guy's only here. This is kind of the pattern, and so we don't have to rally around it. I'm actually on topic here under the heading of what's in it for the congregation, but I'll put a comma here. You talked about your family and staying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me to me on tape about that.
You and I've had many conversations about this in the past, just over lunch and coffee and other things, John. For me personally, in transitions I made, probably what I didn't consider to the degree I needed to was, what does this look like for my family? I can be so myopic around my understanding of mission that to me, like, hey kids, here's an opportunity to grow and advance, what God is doing and be a part of his advancement and help a church and let's go. This is an exciting adventure. And what you learn is you're probably, as the leader of your family and even the leader in the church, you probably have much more. You're probably much more risk accepting than your family. They're probably much more risk adverse.
That's
and then
good.
The next thing you know, you look up and your kids haven't built depth of relationship, and your kids have moved from one place to another, and it's been tough on them, and they've struggled spiritually, relationally, emotionally, and so I think there's something to be said about the well-being of sinking deep roots into a community for a long season, if you can, if God would will.
Yeah. So that that was kind of our mantra. Hey, Ty always goes to the incumbent, and like we're staying unless God tells us otherwise. And our line was, hey, if God tells us to go, the sign's in the yard tomorrow. Like we're not going to drag our feet on this. We will go. And so that was Pam and I said, and we even told the kids at different times, hey, if God tells us to move, like we're not debating that, and we're not going to try to drag our feet. We will go, and so, but our story, which is different than many others, is that we've been here for a very long time, 25 years. And my kids did grow up in the same church, and they had small group leaders that tracked with them all the way through junior high and high school. It's the way we do student ministry around here, is that, if a leader has a margin and they're still in these zip codes, if they can, they walk with a kid from sixth grade all the way to graduation. And so, all of our kids are out of high school, but one of them was meeting with their small group leader today. When my kids make big decisions, they call their small group leaders. They're on the weekends when they're in town. They're with, oftentimes, the kids that were in their small group. They have a richness. I was a military brat, bounced around all the time, and I don't have that. And it's been a gift to give my kids. Now, it doesn't mean that. Our kids or our wives or our husbands drive, our calling. Sure. We don't make an idol out of comfort, but there is a payoff. All that to say, and there's something about modeling to your kids. Hey, we just love a people. We just show up and we're faithful. God wants to move us somewhere else, so be it. But the reason I took the tangent was I think it's very analogous for a congregation,
yes.
For an organization. So they're not your kids, but we are. There's a family component, and so whatever. If you would be, metaphorically the dad, you stick with it, and you're there. The good times and bad. It's really, really good. For the congregation, assuming that you're a good leader and a good pastor, and and you really are bringing your A game. I just see some of the healthiest churches that I've been in are led by people who have been around a long time. Mm-hmm. Whether they were incredibly innovative the last 12 months or not, there's some kind of stability there, and there's a sense that he can, a good, thoughtful leader, he or she can have a long-term plan and has enough time then to execute it. So he doesn't have to come up with, these little 90-day goals. We say it around here all the time. Hey, we're playing the long game. Yeah. We're playing in order, newsflash, to play the long game, you have to be there a long time. But it allows you to make wise, thoughtful decisions. When you think about where you should put some of your energy, or where what you should shut down when you've been there for a long time. I think it's just going to be much better for the congregation. So yeah.
One of the most meaningful things I've been a part of a few times in my life, and I'm sure you have too, John, is just retirements, where a pastor will retire after a long season. You get to go to the celebration service they have. And I love the story, and I've heard this often, of Pastor Dave. He married us. He counseled us. He was there in the hospital when our first baby was born. He was there helping bury my parents when they passed,
yes.
And this sense of, it's not all the sermons, it's not everything. I'm sure there were many sermons along the way that paved the way, but it was basically those moments that are monumental in the life of a person, where that person is present, and it's so impactful. People share these stories through tears and real affection, and that's just how life is. It's mundane for sure, but there are these momentous occasions we have in life, and if you can be a part of a family's life through multiple generations like that, the impact that you potentially have on that family and just the way you live and the way you lead and the way you love is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's good. And so there'll be, in those moments, if that's you when you retire and people say those kinds of things, there will be people in the congregation who are quote unquote successful. They chased something, and they'll sit there and go, "Oh shoot, I'd love to trade places right now.
This person's rich in relationships.
That's it.
Man,
That's it. But that same couple that will say that at the funeral didn't come up and say that. They didn't write that email on a normal Monday. Right? They're deeply impacted. They just don't come back and say thanks. We've talked about this, and so you have to take it by faith that all those things are happening. And the other thing about that is that pastor won't remember probably 1/10 of what that person will say, and they'll talk about these moments that you showed up. And you will forget that, but what a gift if you're around for a really, really long time that you get to mark and shape, influence, encourage, admonish someone, and they're around you for a lifetime. You get a chance to mark them, and what a profound gift you've been given, to walk with the people. Dave, one thing I was thinking, I think you may have hinted this before we hit record, is if a leader is kind of like a head coach, the more time he spends with his team, he understands the gifts, capabilities, opportunities he has with the team. And then when it comes time to go or to do something or to start, he knows how to make all of that happen. If that makes sense, so one of the ways, I'll say it is, hey, you have to know when to pounce. When is there an opportunity, and when is it? But you just know, it's time to go. And when you have that sense as a leader, if you've been around, well, then you know lots of things. One, kind of the gifts that are assembled there, and you would know how to assemble them. You would know how people take and absorb new ideas, new initiatives, their either willingness to go along with the change or the resistance to it. You know who is going to be resistant. You know who, all of those things, you don't need to have 100 meetings to figure all this stuff out. If you've been walking with these people, you know all of these things. And, you go away and you take a summer break and you come back. I've got a sense that God is asking us to do this. And you go, I know exactly how we would do this.
Yeah, that's right.
I know exactly.
Almost intuitively, right?
Yeah.
Over time. You really figure that out.
Yeah. And so I think that, those are just kind of the things, again, like if we wrote a book, there's probably 40 chapters in that book about why to stay. But those are some of the things I think that are the intangibles, that if you'll stay, you get to leverage and you get to take advantage of. There's just tremendous upside. David, it occurs to me like this culture that we live in is not really screaming stay, belong, be faithful. Any thoughts on just like the things that are working against us as we think about staying?
Yeah, I think you said it well. I think the external culture is always new experiences, new adventures, right? We're coming through a political season where everybody's saying, after deconstructing this past general election, it's not good to be an incumbent anymore, right? Because everybody wants change all the time, and you have a very short window. And so the culture wants instantaneous change and instantaneous satisfaction. And that just doesn't square, John, with our understanding of what the Bible teaches about growing in relationship with God. It's over time. It's transformative. It's on the basis of relationship. So we have that. And then I think in ways that maybe we'll understand 20 years from now as we look back and really analyze what this season in the life of the church meant, those factors have seeped into the church, whether it's social media and everybody's church is better than ours, they have more people than we have, better programming, whatever it is, that there's this almost self-destructive tendency towards change. Everything needs to change. I think as a leader, I know I've been guilty of this, of thinking when things were not moving in the church as fast as they could, I need to be a change agent and change everything up. And didn't really help anybody, just left everybody feeling dizzy and confused. And so, again, you and I aren't talking about complacency here. We feel very strongly together like that's not a good thing. And we're not talking about being comfortable. We're talking about picking a path that you believe is God's path for you and your church and staying with it, taking the time to wide out the waves, the ups and downs, to really be faithful in the midst of it. But I think the external culture is very change-oriented. If it's not working for you, change it quickly. I think we have this very deceptive ladder-climbing ministry idea that there's this perfect job for me out somewhere in this perfect location that when I finally find it, everything's going to go smoothly. And you and I, brother, know that does not exist, right? We're sinners amongst sinners. We have Satan and enemies outside of us. It's always going to be hard. And so I think what that can lead to is people prematurely leaving. And so I would say, in my experience, anecdotally, I don't think the problem has been historically people staying too long. I think it's people giving up too early.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I don't know there's anything to say that hasn't been said 1,000 times, but people don't scroll Instagram and become much more grateful for their situation, much more content. It works against us.
Yes.
Everything in this culture is screaming, hey, other people have it way better. And I think I know you know this too, that what I've come to realize is that when you turn the microphones and the cameras off, take away the filters, everybody is frustrated about they should be. As a leader, you should always be frustrated because there's a gap between what is and what should be. You should always feel that. They're frustrated. They have mistakes that they've made that they when they think about them as they go to bed, they just kind of wince and go, "Oh, what was I thinking?" There's hard situations that they don't have resolution to. That's what happens when you lead. But if you fire up someone's Twitter account and they're just kicking out these little pithy phrases and taking pictures of their Photoshop lives, you think, somehow I'm different, and you're not. You're just not, and you know that. Like you don't. I feel like somebody's dad. Me telling you that again, but we can't be reminded enough that we look at a very, very filtered society that and highlight reel that other people kind of throw at us, and it is not real. So when we're thinking about should I go or should I stay, the place not to start is Instagram.
That's right.
And compared to someone else, it's man, if the grass is brown, water it.
Yeah,
and you don't need to jump. So one of the things, actually, two things. Let me insert this because I've already forgotten, and I want to make sure I don't forget it again. What we're not saying is that you stay under abusive leadership,
right?
Toxic leadership. One of the things I hate about this topic with Christians is that people above them will use their power, their any kind of like winsomeness that they have, and really convince people to stay because it's about them, and they're using people. Like they are cogs in their machine. This isn't about their call, God's call in their life. It's about this leader's little kingdom that he's building, and he needs all of these little minions to pull this off. So we're not saying that. And that was, I think, one of the things we addressed in December on when to leave. So hear me say, if you didn't tune into the other one, like there's good times to go, and you can go back and listen to that episode. So I'm just not saying stay there, take it on the chin, metaphorically. There are some times to leave. I think one of the things I want to address is young leaders. So there's a young leader right now. Dave is going to be listening to this. He's in his car. And he's driving, he's in full-time ministry. He's driving in his, beat up Honda Accord. Nice. I know this story well. And he's going, I've got gifts, right? I think if they gave me the ball, I could run. And I just feel passed over. I feel like I'm not getting a chance to express my gifts. And you're telling me I should have a bias towards longevity and a bias towards staying, but square that with where I am right now. And I don't feel like I'm being developed, or don't feel like I'm getting a chance to use my gifts. What's your counsel to him?
This may be a risky piece of advice, which probably is apropos. I think that's where you have to be a little bit vulnerable and have a conversation,
okay.
John.
Yeah.
I do think there can be a sense, again, never to be disrespectful, never to be demanding or entitled, but to share exactly what you said it so articulately. What is it? I want to grow. I want to flex these gifts that God has given me for the benefit of the church. Is there a different spot for me? What do you think the future looks like for me? And at least have the conversation. And if that's clarifying in any way, then take action. But hopefully there's a sense of, let's take our time and think this through. Most of the times that I'm aware of that conversation, or even had it in my own life when I was younger, there's a place where it was safe to do that. I think that in general, I'd say all godly leaders, but most leaders today want to develop. And they want to find spaces. And if you're not doing all that you can do, and you can do more, I think most people would be welcome to hear that and have a conversation of what that might look like. So I think it's okay to have that conversation, pray about it, think it through, maybe script it, maybe even rehearse it a little bit with somebody you trust. But when you get the chance, it's okay to have that conversation and let others in on that. I think what you don't want to do is build up bitterness and resentment towards your leaders or fellow leaders. But I've been surprised how many times I'll see a transition happen, and then the leaders that are left after that transition happens said, "Oh, if we only would have known, we could have figured this out together." Right? That happens sometimes, doesn't it? And it's like, if we could have had a little bit more open dialogue along the way, I think we could have made this last a little bit longer. That would have been beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. And how you have that conversation is going to have a lot to do with how it's received, right? So if you come in there swinging, hey, I'm not getting my reps. I'm more gifted than those three, knuckleheads that you put in the lineup, or where's my budget, or whatever it is. Like, that's just not going to go well for you. But hey, I feel like I've got a call of God on my life. As best I can discern, these are some things that I'm good at, and I'm definitely interested in growing in. Like, what would it look like to take a next step in that? And I want you to know, like, I'm hungry, and I'm trying to be humble. And would you help me think through next steps here? And they may say, hey, there is no next for you. Well, that's a decision you can make at that point, or you can go, hey, they can maybe chart a path for you. My hunch is the people that listen to this, like, whatever the response is, it will not be fast enough for them. They won't go, that's great. They will still feel like they're being held back, that the doors aren't opening at the rate of speed that they think are commensurate with their gifts and with their passion and with their great ideas and their track record. And one of the things I'd want all young leaders to know is, like, pretty much everybody I know has felt that way.
Yes.
I don't know. They don't put that on their Instagram reel, but they've all felt that way. And you're kind of next, and it'll be for you to discern, kind of how you obey God through that. But just know that's nothing unique, and I think God always has something to teach you during those seasons. You never want to miss a lesson that God has for you, and just know that there is kind of a normal part of this. You have to learn how to follow before you learn how to lead, and God's going to work in you before He works through you. All those things, right? And so as a congregation, we're reading through the Bible this year, and so we just finished up Genesis, I guess, this weekend. So finishing up the life of Joseph, and something it just made me laugh when I read it. One of the phrases leaders will use is, hey, your gifts will always make room for you, or Pharaoh will always find his Joseph, meaning, like, as long as you're faithful, like, your time will come and people will find out. And that's generally true. But I just laughed out loud when, after Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, that we got the 7 bad years and the 7 good years coming, Pharaoh says, we can't find anyone like you. And so he puts him in charge, right? Basically, hey, why don't you run this country? I don't know what Pharaoh's going to do, work on his, on his golf game. But hey, Joseph, like, pull all this off. He just says, we can't find anybody like you. And I just thought, if I'm Joseph, I'm saying, hey, I've been here the whole time, man.
Yeah.
I didn't just catch the morning flight in. I've been here. I've been in Potiphar's house. I've been in and out of prison. I've been here. And you're telling me you couldn't find anybody like me? I've been here the whole time. And just, and God's sovereignty, it looks like, I don't think it's a stretch at all. I mean, God was trying to teach Joseph how to trust Him through all this. And now here comes this need. And here comes Joseph's gifts, and in God's timing, they meet. And for many young leaders, you will have some version of that. That if you learn to trust God, keep honing your craft, keep getting better, keep learning, keep taking notes, keep asking questions, keep praying big prayers, keep working on your own soul, that there will be a need. And at that moment, it will feel as if, you've been prepared. You've been preparing your whole life for this moment, and it just makes sense. But it doesn't start there; it kind of ends up there.
That's right.
And so I just want young leaders to know it'd probably be another great episode. It's just a leader's journey. We can unpack that. But I want you to know, just because you're not self-actualized and living your best life and feel like you've got an incredible expression of all your gifts, it doesn't mean it's time to leave.
No.
It doesn't mean it's time.
Well, I think to your point exactly, John, when we look throughout Scripture, Joseph's a good example. David's another example. And this is what we say all the time when we look at the landscape of church today. And what we'll say is there's a lot of failure that happens today because what we end up doing is we elevate leaders whose gifts exceed their character.
Yep.
And what God does in these moments where you feel like, hey, I'm not to where I should be, He goes to work on your character.
Yeah.
And what would be much better for you personally is to delay stepping into that role that suits your capacity really, really well. That's much better to delay that than to step in prematurely and through a lack of character hurt so many people. And so you can trust God in the providence of that. He's at work. And He's at work at something that's just as important as your skill set, if not more important, and that's your character. That's why when we see 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, the qualifications of elder, very few of them are skill set based. They're all character based.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So just submit to God as He continues to do His work in you, and it's okay. It's okay. He'll get you where He needs you in time.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
You can't force that.
It's good. Good words. Well, I want to start landing the plane here, Dave. Any other things that are kind of top of mind, just advice to leaders, admonition to think long-term, to stay, to not quit, throw in the towel in the season that they're in?
Yeah, just have the long view. Have the long view in life. And, these years come by so fast, John. They really do. And I mean, would love your thoughts on what a new leader should experience and how long does it take to really have impact? What do studies say? 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? Well, think about that. Play that out. That means 20 years, twice as much. Whatever that looks like. Do the math.
You're not that good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Longer.
It just takes time, right? It takes time, and that's okay. That's okay. So to me, I think the secret to longevity is finding contentment in the day.
Yeah.
What does today look like? What does it look like for you to abide in Christ today and to faithfully love and serve those around you? And you string together a few days becomes a week, weeks become months, months become years. And I think the biggest threat you'll find as a leader is you and your own propensity towards the next thing. And it's, brother, you and I know that's hard. You and I have big dreams. We talk a lot about this, that, and the other, and it's hard to stay in the moment, but it's where God meets us in that moment, and He has good for us, and He has joy for us in that. And there's good things to be enjoyed today.
Yeah. It's so good. Yeah.
It comes tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes 10 years and 20 years, and there you have it.
That's right. That's right. And I think, we said it before we hit record, that we always overestimate what we can do in a year, and or in even shorter periods than that. And we always underestimate what we could accomplish, see come to fruition, 3 to 5 years. And every leader is victim to that. And but if you put your head down, long obedience in the same direction, over time, you will have. I think you will like where you are, what you're doing, who you're doing it with. You'll have compassion for these people that are family, and you'll be glad that you're there. So. I was gonna close this episode with this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. So Eugene Peterson is talking about kind of the ordination of a pastor, and he's what I'm going to read you. He's saying that the congregation effectively says this to the pastor that they're ordaining, and he's going to end with an imagery that it comes back to Odysseus and we'll talk about it here for a second, but I just love this quote. So imagine a congregation saying this to a pastor that they have just ordained. So, okay, Eugene Peterson says, "We know that there are going to be days and months and maybe even years when we won't feel like we are believing anything and won't want to hear it from you. And we also know that there will be days and weeks and maybe even years when you won't feel like saying it. It doesn't matter. Do it. You are ordained to this ministry, vowed to it. There may be times when we come to see you as a committee or a delegation and we demand that you tell us something else other than what you're telling us now. Promise us right now that you won't give in to what we demand of you. You are not the minister of our changing desires, of our time-conditioned understanding of our needs, of our secularized hopes for something better. With these vows of ordination, we are lasting you fast to the mast of the word and sacrament so that you'll be unable to respond to the siren voices. I love that. If you you think about Odysseus, rolling through and his only strategy was like, I can't, I know that I won't be able to somehow on my own will say no to the siren song. So just lash me up there and sail me right through. And so, leader, pastor, whatever it is for you, there are going to be siren songs. There are going to be siren songs. It's the congregation. It's other organizations. It's the promise of fame or wealth, or even the maybe of any of those things. And I think you're going to like your life if you lash yourself to the mast and say, I will sail right through those dangerous waters. God wants to get you off the mast and lash you to another one. That's great. Go do that. But until then, know that you're not different. There are siren songs every leader will face, but lash yourself up there. And I think through the journey, it's going to give you a steadfastness that when you retire, when your mind starts to slip a little bit and people rush to tell you the things that they wanted to tell you at your funeral, that we're all going to have those moments. You're going to be really, really glad that you stayed. So friends, I hope that something that was said here, a verse or a line that David or I mentioned will give you courage to stay, and God will sort it all out. But we prayed for you before we hit record, that God would use something in here to help you have a long-term view of leadership and ministry, and that you would see the payoff. You would see the payoff of staying there and just not growing weary and doing good. So, friends, thanks so much for listening. As always, if you have thoughts, you've got questions, you have ideas for future episodes, you can always reach us at clp@watermark.org. That's clp@watermark.org. We'll talk to you again next time.